The cold metal floor of the bridge hummed under Elena Reyes's boots as she strode forward, her eyes fixed on the holographic display flickering in front of her. The map of the Sol system, with its various colonies and resource hubs, was etched in brilliant blues and reds. Red, of course, marked the targets of the Coalition's forces, Earth's outer colonies. The familiar sight of her crew, focused, tense, and determined, was almost soothing, but it did little to calm the gnawing feeling in her stomach. She had known this moment would come, but it had arrived too quickly. "Captain," came the voice of her second-in-command, Captain Eric Vance, his deep, steady tone cutting through the growing tension. "We've confirmed their trajectory. They're hitting the perimeter colonies first. Met-Rick station's already gone silent. If they keep up this pace, they'll be at Proxima in 3 days." Elena nodded but didn't speak. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her chest like an invisible hand. The Coalition's forces weren't just here for the colonies, they were here for something much more dangerous, the humans' new weapon. A weapon so devastating, so beyond anything the Coalition could have expected from a species they deemed primitive, that they were willing to burn the galaxy to the ground to destroy it. "Can we intercept?" Elena asked, her voice sharp with command. "Not without risking everything," Eric replied. "We don't have the firepower to take on their flagship." "But..." Elena's gaze shifted to him. "But..." "The new weapon, Captain," he said, his eyes flicking toward the table in the middle of the room where the solar manipulator rested. "We've only tested it once. You're not planning to." "I am," she cut him off. "The time for testing is over. They're coming, and they're not just coming for our colonies. They're coming for everything we've built, Eric. Everything we are. If we wait too long, we won't have a home to protect." The solar manipulator, humanity's crown jewel, lay in the center of the room, dormant and silent. It was a device capable of manipulating stars, turning them into supernovae at will. An unthinkable weapon. Yet, the moment Elena's hands had first touched its controls, she had known its potential. Eric's voice broke her thoughts. "We don't know what using it will do. What if it destabilizes everything? What if we lose control?" "Control?" Elena's laugh was a bitter thing. "We lost control the moment the Coalition decided they could wipe us out without a second thought. This is survival, Eric. They don't see us as equals. They think we're apes, just like they've always thought. It's time they learned how wrong they were." Her words hung in the air, cold and final. Eric opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it, his shoulders slumping slightly in resignation. "Understood, Captain." Elena turned back to the hologram. "Get the fleet ready. We leave in 15 minutes." The bridge was bathed in the harsh glow of red emergency lights as Elena stared at the stars outside the viewport. The cold blackness of space stretched infinitely, a reminder of how small humanity once was in the grand scheme of the universe. But they had grown. They had learned. And now they had something that could turn the tide, a weapon that could make the strongest of alien empires reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. "Status update, Lieutenant," Elena called, her voice a command. "All ships in the Sol fleet are primed and ready for deployment, Captain," came the reply from Lieutenant Mendez, her tone steady as ever. "The station defense grids are online, but I'm afraid they won't hold up against Coalition firepower. We'll need to move fast." "Understood." Elena's jaw tightened. "Give the order. We make for Proxima first. It's our best chance to intercept their fleet before they get too close to Earth. The rest of the fleet will have to handle the outer colonies." Mendez hesitated for a moment. "Captain, about the solar manipulator." "We don't have the luxury of waiting," Elena snapped. "This isn't a decision, Lieutenant. We're going in with everything we have." The Sol fleet, a mix of human-designed battleships and smaller, faster cruisers, moved silently through space, its engines a soft thrum beneath the hulls. Elena stood at the helm of the flagship, watching the fleet's progress, every instinct in her body alert to every shift in the motion of the stars. A sudden, jarring notification interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, "We've received a transmission from Met Rick Station," Eric said, his voice grim. "It's a distress signal. They're reporting that the Coalition's ships are already in orbit, and they're prepping for an attack on the colony." "Put it through," Elena ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing the frantic face of the Met Rick Station commander. His expression was a mix of fear and determination, his voice ragged. "This is Commander Hadley of Met Rick Station. They're here. The Coalition is here. Their ships are." The transmission cut off abruptly. A loud bang echoed through the ship, shaking it as if it had been hit by an unseen force. "Shields are holding," Mendez reported quickly. "But we've just lost the last communication link with Met Rick Station." "They're gone, Captain." Elena's heart sank. The first colony had fallen, and it wouldn't be the last. "Move the fleet to engage," she commanded. "We're not going to let them take any more." As they approached the outer edges of the Proxima system, the tension on the bridge thickened. The distance between the fleet and the Coalition's incoming forces dwindled, and Elena's grip on the armrest of her command chair tightened. The time for hesitation had passed. There was no turning back. "Captain, the Coalition fleet is in range," Eric said, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. "They're positioning for an orbital strike on Proxima Station. We can't stop them without a fight." Elena took a deep breath, her mind racing. The solar manipulator could destroy a star, turn it into a supernova. But to use it now, with the Coalition so close, would be dangerous. Too much power, too little control. Yet she knew there was no choice. "Prepare the solar manipulator for activation," Elena said, her voice low but firm. "We'll use it as our final warning. Let them see what happens when you underestimate humanity." As the crew moved into action, Elena stared once more at the endless void of space. The galaxy was vast, but she was determined to make her mark. The Coalition would know the price of calling humanity apes. And it would be a price they would never forget. The fleet surged forward, ready to face the battle ahead. But in the back of Elena's mind, a single question lingered. Would the cost of survival be worth it? Or would their desperation lead them down a path they couldn't come back from? The answer would come soon enough. The first shots from the Coalition fleet lit up the darkness of space. The stars flickered beyond the viewport, cold and indifferent. Elena Reyes leaned forward, staring out at the Coalition fleet as it gathered, its massive warships gliding like ancient predators through the void. Her knuckles were white from gripping the armrest of her command chair, her mind spinning with the enormity of what was to come. "Captain," Eric's voice was calm but laced with the same tension that permeated the bridge, "they've launched their first wave. They'll reach Proxima Station in under 2 hours." Elena nodded, her lips pressed into a tight line. The situation was dire, but it wasn't just the outer colonies at risk anymore. Proxima Station, humanity's main research hub and a crucial base of operations, was the next target. If it fell, the human resistance would be crippled. Worse, the Coalition would have the upper hand, completely. "All ships, fall into formation," she ordered, her voice unwavering. "We're going to make our stand here." The crew moved swiftly, their training kicking in as the fleet maneuvered into position. Elena could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but there was no time for doubt. There was only the mission, and the unspoken truth that this could very well be humanity's last stand. "Captain, the solar manipulator is online," Mendez said, glancing up from his station. "We've locked onto the nearest star. It's ready for activation." Elena didn't respond right away. The solar manipulator was humanity's trump card, but it wasn't a weapon they could use without consequence. The device harnessed the power of a star, converting it into a deadly force capable of obliterating an entire fleet, or an entire system. But its use came at a terrible price. If they activated it now, it could destabilize the local system, setting off a chain reaction that might spiral out of control. And even if it didn't, the risk of Coalition retaliation would be immense. Her eyes flicked toward Eric, who stood beside her, his face as impassive as ever, but she knew him too well. She could see the questions in his eyes. The hesitation. Is it worth it, Elena? He asked softly, his voice edged with concern. What if it doesn't work? What if we end up burning everything down? Our people, Earth, Proxima. We have no choice, she cut him off, her tone firm. If we wait any longer, we lose it all. Humanity won't survive under the Coalition's heel. Eric didn't argue, but the uncertainty was still there, simmering beneath the surface. The weight of command was something Elena had come to understand all too well. She would bear it alone if necessary. The comms system buzzed to life, interrupting her thoughts. Captain Reyes, a voice crackled from the channel. This is Proxima Station. The Coalition is on our tail, releasing full force. We can hold them off for a while, but we don't know how much longer we can last. The transmission cut out abruptly, and Elena's chest tightened. Proxima Station was on its own now. Lieutenant Mendez, give the order to launch all fighters, she commanded, voice steady despite the rising urgency. We have to buy Proxima more time. Eric, get the fleet into position. No mistakes. The battle that unfolded outside Proxima Station was unlike anything Elena had experienced before. The sky above the station was a war zone, lit by the flashing streaks of laser fire and the blinding bursts of explosions. Human ships, fast, agile, and unpredictable, danced around the lumbering Coalition warships, forcing the enemy to fight on their terms. Elena watched through the viewport as human fighters weaved in and out of enemy fire, their engines screaming as they dodged incoming blasts. The Sol fleet was holding their own, but they were outmatched. The Coalition's ships were faster, their weapons more precise. It was only a matter of time before the human fleet would be overwhelmed. Captain, we're losing fighters at an alarming rate, Eric said, his voice taut with the pressure. Proxima's shields are holding for now, but we can't keep this up much longer. Activate the solar manipulator, Elena said, her decision final. There was a pause, the kind that seemed to stretch into eternity. Are you sure? Mendez asked, his voice tight. We can't be certain. I'm sure, Elena said. We use it now, or we lose everything. With a resigned nod, Mendez pressed the final sequence of commands. The ship trembled as the solar manipulator hummed to life, its energy flowing from the core of the ship to the deep recesses of the weapon. Elena could feel the hum vibrate in her bones. Targeting locked, Mendez reported. We have a clear shot at the heart of their fleet. Elena's hand hovered over the control panel. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with anticipation and dread. She could see it all in her mind's eye, the destruction, the fallout, the possibility of failure. But there was no turning back now. Do it, she ordered. Mendez pressed the activation key. The ship groaned under the weight of the solar manipulator's power, and Elena's breath caught in her throat as the weapon released its force. The energy that shot out from the device was blinding, a surge of light so powerful it momentarily blinded them all. It surged toward the star they had targeted, and for a split second, Elena thought it might have worked. But then, the stars around them seemed to tremble. Captain, the star, Mendez started, but the warning was too late. The star flared in a brilliant explosion of white-hot energy, the shockwave rippling through space. For a moment, Elena thought it would consume everything. But then came the silence, deep, oppressive, and all-encompassing. Did it work? Eric asked, his voice hoarse with uncertainty. Yes, Elena said, watching as the Coalition fleet began to fall back, their ships faltering in the wake of the supernova's pulse. But the victory was hollow, too quick. The solar manipulator had done its job, but they hadn't just hurt the Coalition, they had wounded the system. It wouldn't take long for the shockwave to reach Proxima. Elena felt a deep ache in her chest as the stars around them continued to pulse with the energy of the manipulated sun. The victory was theirs, for now. But she knew that this was just the beginning. Status on Proxima, she asked, trying to push past the sinking feeling in her gut. Shields are down, Captain, Mendez said, his voice tight. We're reading massive structural damage. The station's core is at risk. Elena's mind raced. The price of survival had just skyrocketed. The solar manipulator had given them a momentary edge, but the cost was rising by the second. "Get us in close," Elena said, her voice steel. "Prepare for an evac. We're not leaving anyone behind." As the ship moved toward Proxima Station, Elena looked around at her crew, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. This had been the first real use of humanity's greatest weapon, and while it had worked, the consequences were far from clear. What had they really won? A temporary respite, perhaps. But the coalition would come again. They always did. The bridge was eerily quiet as the crew prepared for the next phase. The immediate threat had been pushed back, but the war was far from over. And Elena knew this was only the beginning of humanity's reckoning with the galaxy. The cold steel walls of the bridge seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the ship. Elena's hands gripped the edge of the command chair, her knuckles stark white, her eyes scanning the data streams flashing on the holographic display. Proxima Station was now a broken husk, its once pristine infrastructure shattered by the explosion caused by the manipulated sun. Only a handful of survivors had managed to evacuate before the worst of the damage had hit, and Elena had made the call to save as many as possible. But the victory felt empty. The coalition fleet had retreated, but it wouldn't be long before they returned. The stars outside seemed to mock them, endless, cold, and indifferent. Humanity had played their hand, but had they won? Or had they simply set the stage for an even darker chapter? "Captain," Eric's voice brought her back to the present. "We've received a transmission from Earth." Elena exhaled slowly, her eyes flicking to the communication screen. Earth, the cradle of humanity, had been quiet for far too long. The silence spoke volumes, and none of it was good. "Patch it through," she ordered, her voice steady but taut. A moment later, the face of Admiral Thomas Holden appeared on the screen. His stern expression and the background of Earth's fading atmosphere behind him told her everything she needed to know. He didn't have to say it, but he did anyway. "Captain Reyes," Holden began, his voice grave. "We've been monitoring the situation. The coalition's retreat is temporary. Our intelligence suggests they're regrouping, assembling a task force several times larger than what we've just faced. And we have a bigger problem." Elena's stomach tightened. "What kind of problem?" Holden's gaze hardened. "The coalition is mobilizing an experimental weapon of their own. A force capable of neutralizing entire fleets in one strike. We believe they're targeting Earth next. If they launch this weapon, we won't be able to stop it." A wave of cold dread swept over Elena, but she forced herself to keep her voice even. "How long until they arrive?" 2 weeks, Holden said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "We need a solution, Captain. And we need it now." Elena clenched her fists, the weight of the world pressing down on her. "Understood. We'll do what we can to delay them." The transmission cut off, leaving Elena alone with the weight of her next decision. Eric stood by her side, his expression unreadable. "We've made an enemy of them, Elena," Eric said quietly. "And now they're coming for Earth. We have 2 weeks to come up with a way to stop this new weapon of theirs." She turned to face him, the pressure mounting. "We don't have the luxury of time. We need to act, and we need to act fast." "Do you think the solar manipulator could be used again?" Eric asked, eyes narrowed. Elena hesitated. The solar manipulator had been their greatest weapon, but the destruction it had caused was still fresh in her mind. Proxima Station was gone. Many of her own crew had been lost in the chaos. It was a double-edged sword, too dangerous to use without understanding the consequences. And yet, in the face of extinction, she knew they might have no choice. "I'm not sure," Elena said. "We've seen the power it can unleash, but we have no way of knowing what the side effects would be if we used it again so soon. The damage to the system could be catastrophic." Eric nodded, his gaze falling to the floor. "Then we need another way." The silence between them grew heavy. Both of them knew the odds were against them, and the path ahead was full of uncertainty. Humanity had fought back with everything they had, but it was never enough. Suddenly, Elena's thoughts sharpened, her mind grasping for something they might have overlooked. What if we don't fight them head-on, she said, her voice gaining strength. What if we take away their advantage instead? Eric looked up, his brow furrowing. What do you mean? We know they have the technology to create this superweapon, Elena continued, her tone growing more focused. But what if we can disable it before it's fully operational? What if we strike at the heart of their command structure? Eric's eyes widened as he caught her meaning. You want to go after their leadership, take out the source of their power. But that would mean getting to their fleet's command ship, the Sovereign. The Sovereign, Elena repeated, the name lingering in the air. It's their flagship, their heart. If we take that down, we might break the Coalition's entire operation. Eric hesitated. It's heavily guarded. They'll have a dozen fleets protecting it. We can't just send a strike team in and hope for the best. Elena looked out at the fleet, her fleet, floating in the void beyond. We don't have the luxury of a drawn-out battle. We can't afford to wait. We hit them hard, strike at the core, and disable their command ship before they can launch that weapon. It's our only shot. A flicker of hope, however faint, ignited in Eric's eyes. How do you suggest we do that? Elena's gaze locked onto him, unwavering. We use their own arrogance against them. We bait them into thinking we're on the defensive, then we hit them when they least expect it. We'll need to move quickly and keep our movements hidden. One false step and it's over. Eric gave a slow nod. I'll coordinate with the fleet. We'll need full cooperation from every ship, but it can work. It's a long shot, but it's the best shot we've got. Good, Elena said, her voice hard with resolve. We move out in 12 hours. Prepare the fleet. We won't let them take Earth. The next 12 hours were a blur of preparations, data analysis, and strategy meetings. Elena barely slept, her mind constantly turning over the plan. The risks were astronomical, but the alternatives were worse. If they didn't strike first, Earth would fall. The Coalition wouldn't stop until humanity was eradicated from the galaxy. All ships are in position, Captain, Eric reported as the fleet gathered outside the safety of the outer colonies, ready to make the jump toward the Coalition's stronghold. We've got a small window of opportunity. Good, Elena said, standing at the center of the command deck, her posture resolute. We take that window, and we make it count. The crew stood ready, each face a reflection of the weight they all bore. The time for hesitation had passed. The next move would either secure humanity's survival or seal their fate. Elena turned to the view screen. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was a blue dot in the vastness of space. The stakes had never been higher. We do this together, she said, her voice firm, her eyes steely with determination. And we fight until we have nothing left. With a sharp intake of breath, Elena turned back to the battlefield ahead. The coming assault would determine the future of the human race, and she was ready to lead her people through the fire. They would fight. They would survive. And they would make the galaxy remember the day humanity turned the tide.